All right, so we're doing section 7.7 today, simple and compound interest. We're in our textbooks on page 362. Now this lesson is very much formula driven. What that means is our original problems, or the first thing that we always are going to write, is the formula, and then we're going to figure out where to plug in the numbers into the formula. What's the most appropriate place? All right, so the first thing you need to know is, what is the simple interest formula? Okay, so you need to make sure you write this in your notes. The simple interest formula is I equals PRT. You are going to see sometimes that the letter A is given for this value. So you're either going to see the variable I or A to represent interest. P represents principal. R is the rate. And T is the time. Okay, then what you basically, I know that, we don't have a lot of writing very often, but you do need to know the definitions for interest. That's the money that people pay you. That's the amount that somebody pays you because you let them use your money. The principal is the amount that you put into the account. Simple interest is the interest that's earned or paid based on the principal. And the annual interest rate is the percent of the amount of the principal that you made. All right, so let's see what this looks like in a problem format. Okay, it says people buy bonds as a way to earn money. If a $1,500 bond earns 4% simple interest per year in its purchase price, how much will it earn in interest after 2 years? Now, the problem is going to tell you what kind of interest it is. If it's simple interest, we're going to use our formula I equals PRT. All right, so go ahead and write that in your notes. You don't have to write down all the words. Write down your original formula. And now we have to figure out where the numbers go. What are they substituted in for into the formula? So if you are depositing or investing a $1,500 into the bond, that's going to be your principal amount. Your principal amount is always what you put into the account. All right, so your principal is $1,500. You don't need a dollar sign. $1,500. Now your rate is always going to be the interest rate. So that's an easy one to pick out. What's your interest rate? 4%. It's 4%. But what do you have to do to the percentage before you can multiply it? Change it to a decimal. So automatically do that. Before you plug it into the formula, make sure you change it to a decimal, 0.04. And then the time is in years, okay? So you need to make sure that the problem gives you the time in years. Sometimes it'll give you the time in months. We'll talk in a minute about what you have to do when they give you the time in months. In this case, they say 2 years, so we multiply it by 2. Now, I don't know the interest, okay? And like I said, your book may give you the variable A. A is the same thing as I, okay? All right, so now you're just going to multiply all the numbers together to find your interest. And I equals what? Yes, I equals $120. We're not done yet, though. We found our interest. Now I want to know, what is our final balance, or B? What is our final balance on the amount of money that we had? So how much did we invest in the beginning? $1,500. How much did it earn in interest? $120. So how much do I have now? $1,620. Okay. Now there is a formula for this. I think it's a little confusing because, don't you agree, you can basically just figure that out, right? You make a certain amount in interest, add it back to your principal amount, and that's your balance after that period of time. All right, so your homework is going to ask for the interest and the balance. So 120 is part of the answer, and then your final balance is adding it back to the principal, which is $1,620. All right, now I want you to do just one practice. It's basically the exact same information, except now it's 5 years instead of 2. All right, I equals PRT. Principal is the same, 1,500. Rate is the same, 0.04. Only thing that's different is the time, which is 5. So how much was my interest? $300. $300. So what's my final balance? $1,800. And those are my answers. All right, very good. Okay, so now let's move on to example 2. Now in example 2, we're just finding a different part of the simple interest formula. Now it says you get a summer job at a bakery. Suppose you save $1,400 of your pay and you deposit all of that into an account that earns simple annual interest. There you go. They tell you simple annual, so now you know your formula. After 9 months, the balance is $1,421. What is the annual interest rate? So what do we start with? I equals PRT. Okay, what's our principal? What's the principal amount? How much did we put in? $1,400. Do we know the rate?
No.
Do we know the time?
Yes.
Now the time is in months. So I have two options here. I can either make it a fraction or I can change it to a decimal. Preferably, I would rather multiply by a decimal. But how do I know what's my denominator? I know it's 9 over something, 9 over 12, because there's 12 months in the year. Okay, so 9 over 12, change it to a decimal, and then we'll plug it in. So that's going to be 0.75. Wait a second, I can't have two parts of it that I don't know. So I either have to know the interest or I have to know the interest rate, okay? So let's look back. If I had $1,400 at the beginning and I end up with a balance of $1,421, where did the $21 come from? That's the amount that I earned in interest. So although the problem doesn't say my interest is this much, I can subtract, okay, well, this is how much I put in, this is how much is there at the end, so I subtract them to find my amount in interest being $21. So that's where I get the $21 from. Now I'm ready to simplify the right side. I multiply 1,400 times 0.75 to get 1050. 21 equals 1050R. Divide both sides by 1050. 21 divided by 1050 equals 0.02 or 2%. 2%. Okay, and that's going to be my interest rate. Okay, so now let's do, we're going to skip the first one for now, okay? I want to do this second problem right here because now we're solving for a different part. I just want to show you one more problem, how we can solve for different parts of the simple interest formula. So go ahead and solve for P using this information. Now I did tell you that A would be substituted in for which variable? In for I. A substitutes in for I, okay? Those kind of work interchangeably. All right, go ahead and make your substitutions and try to solve. All right, I equals PRT. All right, what do we plug in for I? 14, very good. 1424.50 equals don't know P. What's my rate? 0.035. And what's my time? 0.5. Did you do 0.5?
Yes.
All right, it's not 6 because remember we have to write it in terms of years. All right, so what's 0.035 times 0.5?
0.0175.
Very good. Okay, so we're going to leave that long decimal for now. 1424.50 equals 0.0175 P. Divide both sides by 0.0175. Yep. 0.0175. And P equals $81,400. That's how much you would have to invest in that account to yield that type of interest. All right, again, just solving for different parts of the simple interest formula. All right, moving on to the last example. Okay, now this is the last formula that you need to know, and you must have it memorized. A equals P times 1 plus R in parentheses raised to the power of T. all the variables still mean the same thing. P is principal, A stands for the possible interest, R is the rate, T is the time in years. Okay, so let's look at how this looks in a question, okay? It says you deposit $1,500 into an account that earns 2.4% interest. Here it is. Here's my hint. Compounded annually. That's what tells me that I'm using in our compound interest, which we know is A equals P times 1 plus R raised to the power of T. We're going to write that as our original formula. Now we need to make our substitutions. We don't know A. P is 1,500. 1 plus, what's our rate as a decimal? 2.024 raised to the power of T, which is how many years? 6. And now we can plug all of this straight into our calculators. What I want you to do is 1,500. Start your parentheses. The parentheses buttons are right above the 8 and 9 on your Casio calculators. 1,500, start your parentheses. 1 plus 0.024, end your parentheses. Now you'll see an X with a shaded in box right underneath your circular dial. You see with the shaded in box? Tap that and now fill in the shaded in box with the number of the time in years, which is 6. And then press equals. Round it to the nearest penny, and what do you get?
1,729.38.
Okay, and then don't forget your dollar sign, because we're talking in terms of money. And that's your answer. Okay, so calculators make this really simple. It's just a matter of plugging it in. Okay?